I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us. Again, my name is Paul. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Thank you so much for being with us. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. We do have a great show for you. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, going to introduce you to U.S. Army Major Richard Ojeda. He's a U.S. Army retired, the co-founder of CBDoils.com. We're going to talk a little bit about the vaping crisis. I just want to get his opinion. Never met Mr. Ojeda before, but excited to meet him and talk to him. Then at the bottom of the next hour, Family Council's David Cox will be with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in Canada, how some people are coming to the sad realization that suicide is cheaper, is a cheaper form of health care than, sustain health. We might as well just kill them. Anybody see that Man in the High Castle? I think I'm caught up on it. I don't know, season 4 may be out, I'm not sure. But in season 1, that's when you really know. By the way, this is like a dystopian, it's in the 60s where the Nazis and Japan won World War II, so they basically split the country in half. And you really know how insidious the Nazi ideology is in this fictional show. It's really good. When you just run across some, boss hog like local law enforcement on the Nazi side, and you start asking, well, what's that smoke and ash in the air? There, started raining, kind of snowy and ash, and he's like, oh, well, that's it's incineration day at the nursing homes. It's like, what? Anyway, some people coming to this realization in Canada, suicide is cheaper than health care for some. What is going on? That's not valuing life. We'll also talk to David Cox about more about pro-suicide groups helping dementia patients, requesting starvation. I mean, if you're dementia, they're trying to, if you're not right in the head, but you're wanting to starve to death, that they just want to let you. Come on now. I mean, we have some responsibility here. 870-275-9799. So we got that, plus much, much, much more. A lot of news in the headlines, both state and federal, and we want to get to it all. But before we do any of that, I want to start by bringing you the sad news today that Republican pioneer, it's being described on Facebook that she was the heart and soul of the Republican Party here in Arkansas before it was cool. Her name is Dorothy Crockett, and she has passed away yesterday, at her home, I believe, surrounded by her family. And so I just wanted to start this program by, first of all, just recognizing the loss that we're experiencing, that her family's experiencing, but she had such an impact on so many people, and that's certainly evidenced by my Facebook feed. Dorothy was, she was committed to this mission of the Republican Party, to wake people up, to shake people out of the apathy that many people were in, especially in Arkansas, being a blue state for so long. She actually legitimately cared, and let me tell you this: I not only did she touch so many lives, and she meant so much to specifically her Mississippi County Republican Committee, and I actually coincidentally was there at the Mississippi County Republican Committee last Thursday, And that was one of the topics of conversation. Dorothy was obviously not able to be there. They knew that the end was near, and they were just, you could tell that there's a piece of them that's missing, that they've depended on. That I'm even told that Dorothy was wanting to get better so that she could once again be a delegate next year at the Republican National Convention, so she could once again stand up and vote for Donald Trump as the nominee. These are the things that were, some of the things that were on her mind in her last days. And I just, today is a sad, sad day. It's also a victorious day for Dorothy in heaven with Jesus. So anyway, I wanted to start the broadcast by recognizing her contribution. If you want to say her contribution to the Republican Party, but if you actually look at what the Republican Party stands for on paper, it stands for liberty, it stands for freedom, it stands for individual responsibility, including the individual responsibility we have to help other people in our spheres of influence. So her contribution was to the cause of liberty. And I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful to know her even in the limited capacity that I did, and really appreciate her. And I'm privileged to know her. And you just go on Facebook and read all of these tributes, all of these moving tributes to Dorothy Crockett, and you'll know this was somebody who touched many, many lives. Somebody that once you met and interacted with, you didn't forget, because she was definitely somebody that just kind of loved on other people. The telephone number 870-275-9799. Let me know if any of you guys have kind words, by the way, to say to Dorothy. Please text me 870-275-9799 or sound off on the Facebook page. I'll read them. Let me know what your interaction with Dorothy Crockett was, what impact she made on your life. Sound off on the Facebook thread today, and I will read them about Miss Dorothy. Okay, let's get into it, shall we? This is fascinating. First of all, you see our graphic today, which says "Impeach China," because feel like that's fitting, don't you? Everybody wants to talk about impeachment. People want to talk about, or the governor of our own state, Asa Hutchinson, says that the impeachment inquiry needs to be fleshed out, if you will, that the president made an unwise phone call to Ukraine. What a joke. So he wants to talk about impeaching Donald Trump. I say we impeach China. And matter of fact, there are now people putting the pieces together between the Ukraine and China and Hunter Biden. And preliminarily, it looks like Hunter Biden was set up to essentially steal military secrets for China, which wouldn't be the first time that this kind of stuff has happened, And then, of course, you couple that with Congressman Rick Crawford's comments about the national security implications that are at risk when it comes to Arkansas, bringing in these Chinese communist entities disguised as companies. That's a big deal. You would think, I thought, wasn't Asa Hutchinson at one point in the George W. Bush administration, didn't he work for Homeland Security? Maybe China wasn't a threat back then, according to, I don't know, maybe there's just some information we don't know here. But I'll tell you this, the most current information from the delegation of Arkansas is certainly going to be, one of those is going to be from Congressman Rick Crawford, who sits on that House Permanent Intelligence Committee. For sure. Okay, so let's go to this first article, though, because there was a piece of fake news that was posted last night. I'm sure many of you saw it. It was a hit piece against Barr and Trump. And once again, we had more information leaked about President Trump's phone conversation with the Australian Prime Minister. Now this will be the second time this has happened. And they start to say Trump pressuring Australia to discredit Mueller probe. By the way, can you go to the Drudge Report? I've got that pulled up. I just want you to understand something here. The Drudge Report headlines are very frustrating. It's just Drudge Report. I think I already have the tab pulled up, or maybe you got rid of it. Okay. there's been a protester shot in Hong Kong. That's a new thing. But if you go over to the far left, Trump asks Australian Prime Minister to help discredit Mueller. Barr recruits foreign officials. Like, they were the Drudge Report here. I mean, just taking the liberal line, taking the anti-never Trump line. Drudge has been doing this for a while. I don't know why. I don't know why this is going on the way it is, but it's pretty frustrating to see this continue to happen over at the Drudge Report. But who knows? So go back to this one though. The Daily Wire. Breaking letter from Australian official emerges that casts doubt on reports in the New York Times. So immediately you have the New York Times, and immediately you have the New York Times story being discredited. A letter emerged late on Monday. This is from Ryan Saavedra from the Australian government that directly disputed the accuracy of the New York Times report that claimed that President Donald Trump pushed Australia to help Attorney General William Barr investigate the origins of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation in an attempt to discredit the investigation, and what the Times claimed was an example of Trump using high-level diplomacy to advance his personal political interests. No. I'm sorry, Democrats. You tried to participate and enact a coup. Right. You tried to enact a coup. You were caught. The Russia collusion was a big nothing burger, but yet you had all of these working pieces in the Obama administration and from foreign leaders in the Five Eyes program, and the president wants to now expose it. That's the real thing. If you get anything from the national narrative, the president is trying to expose how the deep state, the intelligence communities were weaponized against a presidential candidate and a president-elect. And the president, Trump, is going to get to the bottom of it. And he's sniffing around Ukraine. And now we have William Barr talking to the Italians. We have William Barr talking to the Australians. And guess what? They are wanting to cooperate because I think they are now free from this deep state, global, Democrat, whatever you want to call it. There's definitely been a change in the world order the president is making. The CIA apparently doesn't like it. And go back to the president's United Nations speech when he encouraged all countries, not just the United States, but all countries to never let go of your own nation's sovereignty. Dear Attorney General, this is from Joe Hockey of Australia. I refer to President Trump's announcements on the 24th of May that you will investigate the origins of the FBI's probe into the Russian links to the 2016 election. I note that the president referred to Australia, the United Kingdom, and the Ukraine as potential stakeholders. That right there is why the Democrats, the media, and the deep state, the CIA, are having a fit because the president and William Barr are trying to put the pieces together of how our so-called allies like the United Kingdom, Australia, and the Ukraine, what they were doing to cooperate with the Obama administration at the time to spy, if not frame, members of the Trump campaign or Donald Trump himself. That is why this is such a big deal to the media and to the Democrat Party right now, because it represents the end of them if this is all exposed. The Australian government will use its best endeavors to put your efforts in this matter. While Australia's former High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, the Honorable Alexander Downer, is no longer employed by the government, we stand ready to provide you with all the relevant information to support your inquiries. The acting White House Chief of Staff, the Honorable Michael Mulvaney, has also been copied on this letter. So, I mean, this is the reason. This is the actual reason. Ryan Saavedra says, the development comes after the New York Times tried to suggest that it was a scandal for Trump to ask for Australia to cooperate with an ongoing Department of Justice investigation into the Russia investigation. Shortly after the Times report was published, a source at the DOJ pushed back on it, telling Fox News, quote, the countries have been helpful. There was no pressure required. the president was letting the heads of other countries know that the attorney general would be contacting the appropriate law enforcement entities in each country. When Barr was in Italy last week, he did talk to law enforcement officials there about John Durham's review. John Durham is investigating all of this. Quote, the DOJ official also stressed that this has been a routine procedure in diplomacy and that Barr would not usually reach out to his direct counterpart in another country unilaterally. Instead, usually there would be an introduction of sorts made at the head of state level. The flood of new information surrounding the DOJ's investigation, including new reporting from the Washington Post, which sought to cast Barr in a negative light for conducting his job, claiming that he was trying to help Trump discredit the Mueller investigation. Well, I mean, you can frame it that way. Hasn't the Mueller investigation already been discredited? You spent millions of dollars, you had all those subpoenas, and then Mueller doesn't even know what's going on, if you believe that. I mean, he testified, he didn't even know what was in his own report. Pretty sure it's already been discredited. So what's the president really trying to do? He's trying to make sure this never happens to another president or presidential candidate again when the intelligence agencies are weaponized just because you have a guy like Trump who's not loyal and can actually make his own decisions for himself. He's not loyal to the status quo, the power brokers, the stakeholders, right? Love him or hate him, the man is an agent of massive change. Here is go to this, just to further my point, let's go to one more publication. Here is the Daily Caller, okay? Report, A.G. Barr is ramping up his probe of CIA, FBI activities in 2016. Now, just if that headline is true, if that's true, this is something that has been going on for a while. And it's something that filtered through, and wouldn't you know it, it's a CIA operative in the White House that does this whole whistleblower nonsense where they change the criteria of a whistleblower from first-hand information to where it can be second or third. Is that a coincidence? He's ramping up his probe of the CIA, and guess what? Just like Chuck Schumer said, you go after the intelligence community, they've got 6 ways to Sunday to bring you down. Well, that's exactly what we're doing right now. And the media is apparently an asset of the deep state. Real quick, just Attorney General William Barr has met with foreign officials regarding an investigation into the surveillance activities against the Trump campaign. This is according to the Washington Post reporting this. Barr was joined in the meeting by John Durham, the U.S. Attorney of Connecticut, citing anonymous sources familiar with the matter. As the Department of Justice has previously announced, a team led by U.S. Attorney John Durham is investigating the origins of the U.S. counterintelligence probe of the Trump 2016 presidential campaign. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the real reason, from what I can tell. You know, it's always a few days after the initial scandal. It's always a few days after the initial mainstream media does their hits, convinces a select portion, starts them on this phony narrative, this phony path, leading to phony speculative conclusions. And here we are. Now we realize this is what was really going on behind the scenes that's not publicized, that's not talked about, but it's what has driven the fake news headlines. The fact that they're looking into those who originally were harassing, looking into, and setting up, i.e. Joseph Misfud, the Trump campaign, and that was the entire insurance policy that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were referring to in their extramarital text messages. We're going to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News. Don't go anywhere. So I want to go back to Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding, retired U.S. Air Force. General Spalding, welcome back. It's always great to have you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you. Great to be here.
Yes, sir. So I want to go over credentials again. You're a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, but specifically, you're an expert at United States-China relations. Tomorrow, your new book is out, Stealth War: How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept, coming out tomorrow, October the 1st. And so we've talked to you several times now. But, I mean, I really feel like with what we're seeing overseas, the spotlight, at least in the alternative media, being shined on what the Bidens did in Ukraine, what they did in China is a much higher dollar amount, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Hunter Biden went over there and got either $1 billion or $1.5 billion from the Chinese to start a hedge fund.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs, as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parrot. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Speaking of China and the fact that China needs to be impeached, I don't know if there's a way to impeach China, and all of a sudden these Arkansas Chinese communist entities, these Chinese entities coming into Arkansas will cease and desist, maybe rethink it. This article, go to this Democrat Gazette article, Joe. China cautions the U.S. on investment curbs, compiled by the Democrat staff at the Gazette there. China warns the U.S. against trying to limit. There's been some talk about removing Chinese companies from the U.S. stock exchange. This is something the White House denies, but China is cautioning. Foreign Ministry appealed to Washington. Meet us halfway. The Trump administration issued a partial and qualified denial to the report, which said officials are discussing options, including forcing of delisting of Chinese companies from the U.S. stock exchanges, imposing limits on investments in Chinese markets by U.S. government pension funds. To exert extreme pressure and even attempt to force the decoupling of China-U.S. relations will definitely damage the interests of U.S. and Chinese enterprises and people, cause financial market turmoil, and endanger international trade and the world's economic growth, said Chinese Foreign Minister spokesman Zheng Shuang. Well, Jen Shuang, that's exactly something Asa Hutchinson would say. Matter of fact, he said almost the exact same thing about decoupling, a complete decoupling of the U.S.-China relationship. That's exactly what he said almost verbatim to Talk Business and Politics a few weeks ago. I wonder if Trump is impeached. Let me ask you this. If Hillary Clinton were president today, would these Chinese companies already be constructing their factories here in Arkansas? The answer is yes. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
That's quite a bit more money.
It's a lot more money, and there's also this book out there, Secret Empires, Peter Schweitzer, and he makes these allegations that oftentimes these American politicians, their children are being bought off by the Chinese. Is this something that it goes further than just Joe Biden's son Hunter?
It's rampant, and it's as I detail in the book, it's not confined to the left. It happens on the right. As I talk about in the book, the Mitch McConnell and his wife have a very strong relationship with the former president of China, Jiang Zemin. His sister-in-law is on the board of the Bank of China. So, I mean, there's strong associations, and not just with the political elite, also with the Wall Street elite and the tech elite.
Yeah.
And this is what globalization has brought us.
Can you talk a little bit about Confucius Institutes and universities across the U.S.? And the reason I mention this is because over the weekend, Congressman from Arkansas, Congressman Rick Crawford, he was on statewide television, and he actually mentioned this Confucius Institutes as one of the bad things about China. He actually kind of went off and said, Arkansas has these economic development deals where we're trying to bring in these Chinese companies, and he went off and said the Chinese are not coming to Arkansas to help us. But what can you tell us about Confucius Institutes?
Well, the Confucius Institutes themselves are there to essentially provide Chinese Communist Party propaganda to the students and faculty of our universities. And so they blend the teaching of Chinese language with a very specific history and culture and essentially talking points that the Chinese Communist Party wants you to.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. I want to welcome to the program, we have U.S. Army Major Richard Ojeda with us, U.S. Army retired. He is the co-founder of CBDOils.com. Major Ojeda, welcome to the program this morning.
Hey, thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being with us. So, hey, can you just first of all tell me a little bit about your background, obviously in the military, and when did you decide, to co-found this website, CBD Oils?
Well, I spent 24 years in the military. When I retired from the military, I returned home to Logan, West Virginia, started teaching ROTC in high school. But also, I became a state senator, and a bill that I pushed and was able to pass was medical cannabis, and it made West Virginia the 29th state to become legal for medical cannabis. One of the main reasons why I started that is because of the situation that we have, where we have 22 veterans that are committing suicide every single day in this country. And, a lot of it deals with PTSD. It deals with anxiety. And while I was doing, the research, I realized that, medical cannabis and then, CBD helps things like anxiety and PTSD. So, we decided, me and my partner decided to start CBDOils.com. And, there's a lot more to it than just an online marketplace. the future that we have for this country is we would like to be able to offer, just even product veterans that are struggling, entrepreneurship programs, things of that nature with this program.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Now, can you tell us? I mean, act like that we don't, act like I don't know anything. There is a difference between CBD oil and say, marijuana and the THC content. Is that correct?
Yes, there is. CBD has no THC in it. CBD can come from hemp. It's basicly has the healing qualities, except it just doesn't have the THC. So you don't have to worry about failing your analysis. You don't have to worry about getting any types of high.
I see it everywhere. Advertisements for CBD. I know people that take it, and they seem to think that it really does. It does help them with chronic pain. Is that something that you have found to be true?
Well, it does, but once again, there's also people out there that says, I've tried it and I didn't feel any value from it. I think you have to try it. Mm-hmm. But I will tell you that it's worked wonders for my family. I have a daughter that had the scoliosis surgery when she was 12 years old. She's had 2 surgeries on her hips for hip impingement. Doctors told us when she was 12 that she would always be susceptible to opioid addiction because she's going to spend her life living in pain. And I will tell you right now, CBD oil is what we use, and it's done wonders for her. I would rather her do that than ever take an Oxycontin or a hydrocodone.
Yeah.
So it's been wonderful. And once again, veterans, PTSD, you name it, it helps.
Yeah, that's true. I am still amazed at how many people will go to the Oxycontin, the synthetic heroin. I mean, is what we're talking about. And they completely dismiss this other thing. I do kind of find it interesting because heroin, actually needle injection heroin is back in a big way because you had the basically prescription free for all of these opioids, and now there's all these regulations clamping down on them, understandably so. So people are still people are moving towards this heroin, and it's coming back in a big way. It's it's definitely alarming. Some people, well, I'll just say in Dave Chappelle's very controversial, not to me, but controversial stand-up special, talking about how, he compared heroin to the crack epidemic, from the 80s.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Hey, we're talking with U.S. Army Major Richard Ojeda. Now, I have this story here in front of me that deals with vaping. People are banning e-cigarettes. Here in Arkansas, we've got a proposal to tax them at, I think, 67%. And so I don't really know your opinion on this. So, I mean, some people are saying that a lot of these vaping deaths are related to, THC that you're getting in the black market anyway. It's not some of these over-counter. But then you have the headlines of the lung disease or the lung infections. What are your thoughts on vaping right now?
Well, we went ahead and we pulled products from our page because we want to err on the side of caution until we can know for fact, what's causing the situation. However, I believe what's really going on is, you have these companies out there that make these products or are the ones that come up with the oils. And what they're doing is it's almost like a Breaking Bad situation where you have a group that has so much of the oil, and they realize if they cut 25% of it and replace it with synthetic oils, they can save money. And I think that's what's going on because when they are basically conducting the autopsies for those folks who have passed away, they're finding that their lungs are coated with this type of oil that's really not what the vaping oil truly is made up of, and I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have is people trying to cut the product to be able to make a little money.
Well, here in Arkansas, we just the vaping industry here just survived a bill a couple of months ago that was attempting to tax them. It failed. It got out of one chamber, but then it died in committee when people realized what it was. And I watched business owner after business owner of these vape shops who are helping people, get off of combustible cigarettes, come up and plead in front of the committee, hey, we can't handle this kind of tax increase. It's going to cripple us. we're not the same as Juul. They just kept saying, we're not Juul, we're not Juul. That's not what we do. We formulate, whatever somebody wants. Juul is a ton of nicotine in the system. So, I mean, are there any, you think those arguments are relevant?
I do. I think that, what needs to happen in this industry in terms of the vaping and that side of it. You're talking CBD. You're also talking lotions. You're talking tinctures. You're talking gummies. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the vaping products. I think that what needs to happen is the vaping companies out there need to get together. They need to get organized, and they need to really, stand up for themselves and once again create rules and regulations to make sure that certain things and certain types of products cannot be added to what they have, so that we don't have this problem. Because I really do believe, vaping's been going on for quite a while. Now all of a sudden we've got 9 deaths in it, and 500 people have, showed up, to be ill. But there's a reason why. It wasn't like this. Vaping's been going on for a couple of years now.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that that's what this is it's practices that are being used by people in the industry that probably shouldn't. And if they had some type of, organization that would mandate exactly what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do, rules and regulations, we may not be in this situation.
Is it difficult, though, to advocate? You've got the side that wants to tax it, and and you've got the side that also is using kids, and it's almost like, well, once you use kids, it's like, oh, this is a terrible emergency. It kind of takes away, in a way, diminishes people's critical thinking skills. You know what I mean? Like it's referred to online as pedophrasty. We used this word last week, where it's like if you use a kid to bolster your argument. We saw this, I think, with the climate change, Greta Thunberg as well. Then all of a sudden, you're going to look like a bad guy if you question a narrative that's based off of, these, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids are newsflash, they're smoking, and we've got to find a way to stop that,
Right. I personally, I think that no matter what, when you're talking about things like that, where you're ingesting things into the body, I think kids should not even be in the mix. I mean, I don't think they should be used. I don't think it should be allowed. I mean, and it's the same thing. I never knew my daughter. My daughter actually, was vaping, and I didn't know about it until, wow, there she was. And she didn't think nothing of it because, once again, nobody says it's illegal. So, I was very shocked when I first saw that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is it does kind of come to, down to the parents. Kids have always been smoking. That's what I keep saying. They've been, the age is 18, and some people are raising it to 21, and people are still smoking when they're not supposed to be. I mean, that's just kind of what it is. And if they're getting the THC pipes on the black market now, then you would assume, regardless of what the government does. See, I guess I just don't buy this. You said are you still a state senator in the state of West Virginia?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, I guess what I don't get is, it's all this compassion is what we're told. We've got to do this for the kids. But we're talking about a tax increase. And so there's also this incentive where the governor kind of wants people to keep vaping. The government kind of needs people to keep vaping, but as they transition off of combustible cigarettes, there might be a little bit of revenue shortfall. And so, here in Arkansas, I think that's why we're, got one guy who's proposing a 67% increase on it,
Well, I can understand, people wanting to, generate funds for, the states and things like that in issues like this. But, I also can see that, maybe possibly some of the flack that is being caught right now is that, cigarette companies are losing money because people are switching over to something else. I mean, I look at that as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of variables. It's not really just black and white. That you would agree with that,
right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Major Richard Ojeda, really appreciate you coming on the program today. It's great to meet you, and I appreciate your service to our country, and I also appreciate your compassion for veterans who are suffering with PTSD. It's a real issue, and again, your website, I mean, I think it's a very coveted name. I'm sure in the domain world, cbdoils.com. So I appreciate you, and I congratulate you on your success, sir.
Hey, thank you very much. You have a blessed day.
Okay, you too. That's Major Richard Ojeda, everybody, co-founder of CBDoils.com. We're going to reset here. We're going to make a YouTube video of this. If you want to share this with your friends, find it very interesting. And it's another excuse, really, to talk about what Arkansas is going through with the governor's nephew, Senator Jim Hendren, proposing the 67% vaping tax, and not calling it the vaping tax bill, calling it the School Safety Act. This is an attempt. Somehow, if we tax it, we really actually think we're going to disincentivize the behavior, which I think they want the behavior to continue, quite honestly, but they want to use kids to get more money revenue into the government because we need every dime that we can. Well, no, that the money will go to school safety. Well, okay, if it goes to in addition to what they're already spending on school safety, but I got a feeling it's not. It's just going to be used somewhere else, and it's going to plug a hole, and it's a shell game, and this is what happens. But, I mean, can we get beyond this of, using kids to try to get more money out of people? Because really and truly, while they're going to highlight this child's problem, this not new thing of kids smoking, whether it's vaping or combustible cigarettes, it's not a new thing. We're going to highlight this, and what we're really doing is taxing those who are already 21, who are right now smoking, vaping, ingesting nicotine into their bodies, and they're doing it at a lower tax rate than the government elite would have us, or they're doing it at a lower tax rate. They see that out there as revenue that is not being gotten, and that's the bottom line is why. The question every Arkansan needs to be asking, considering it's October 1st, and considering the gas pump that I drove by yesterday at $2.15 is now $2.19 this morning, is because of the new gas tax, 3 cents at the pump, 6 cents if you're diesel. That's now been enacted today. The question on every Arkansan's mind needs to be, with all these tax increases and now proposed tax increases, is why are they continuing to ask the people for more revenue, more money, more taxes? Okay? Why are they continuing to do it? And the answer is, we don't have enough money for Medicaid. That's the answer to the question of why are Arkansas's establishment political leaders, they seem to be in this perpetual quest for revenue, and yet the Republican supermajority, we're a Republican supermajority state, which is supposed to be for lower taxes. It's because, folks, we have spent our money unwisely and we have over-leveraged ourselves, and they're looking down the road, and they see, and people tell me anonymously, they don't want to be on record, but they do say that, yeah, we're okay now, but in a couple of years, we are going to run out of money. They see it and this is at a time when we've got amazing economic growth here in Arkansas, and really low unemployment. And so they're trying to get as much money from us as they can now to try to plug these holes they see in the future. And they don't want to fess up and admit that they messed up by embracing Obamacare Medicaid expansion and not facing up to it and doing the hard work. They don't want to admit it. I mean, this is what I don't understand. I mean, even liberals, who are big fans of Obamacare Medicaid expansion, like John Brumment, for example, he's a big fan. All of these the $70 million net tax increases are certainly not, while we're lowering the top individual income rate, I'm for that. I'm for lowering the top individual income tax rate. But that's got to irk liberals, because you're taxing everybody else, whether it's military veterans who buy candy and soda, or people that buy things online. That's poor, that's rich, that's middle class, that's everybody. So you would think the liberals would be a little bit more upset about it. In terms, they try to say these taxes are regressive when in fact they're not. I mean, people who make more money pay more in sales tax because they do more shopping. They buy more expensive things. But still, you'd think there'd be some flack. When maybe that's why you have Senator Jim Hendren, who, tried to get the earned income tax credit passed for the Democrats, which he did. Of course, it failed because the Republicans were like, wait a second, we're Republicans. We don't want an earned income tax credit. We don't want to give the Democrats what they want. very, very strange times right now that we're living in here in Arkansas. The bottom line is right now, today is October 1st. This is when the gas tax goes into effect, and you're paying more at the pump now because of what the Arkansas General Assembly did, at the beginning of this year. And it's supposed to go to pay for roads. Let's hope that it does. Let's hope that it is an equitable way of, fixing this and expanding that. But, there was a way to do this without raising your taxes, but it would have required cutting or spending less. And that is something that, at least under the current leadership, has been rejected for the last almost 4 years, that we are going to spend more and more and more each and every year, instead of taking that extra money and using it to pay for roads or using it to pay for the tax cuts that they claim must be paid for. No, instead we're going back to the people, and in fiscal year 2020, they raised their taxes $70 million on the whole. They cut some here, they raised some there, but when it's all said and done, according to the Department of Finance Administration, we're paying more. And I actually think it's more than $70 million, because the internet sales tax is giving them much more revenue than they thought. By the way, I need to make a correction. When we come back, I will, because the city of Jonesboro and Craighead County, there's a report on how much more money they're getting from internet sales tax, and it's quite a bit. Versus, I'd like to know how much the state is getting as a whole, but something tells me they don't want to tell us, because that's going to throw those numbers through the roof. And it'll even go against their narrative that somehow it was net neutral, which it clearly wasn't according to DFNA's own numbers. Telephone number 870-275-9799. We'll be back in just a moment.
Want you to hear. Of course, they also use it to censor. So if somebody wants to come and give a talk about Taiwan or Tibet, then they'll either complain to the university leadership or stage protests. They're also used as a means of organizing the ability to watch over the Chinese students to make sure they don't become too Americanized. And frequently, the consulate or embassy will send somebody to the Confucius Institute to speak to the Chinese students to warn them about becoming too close to Americans or picking up any, Americanized ideas about freedom. And then finally, the universities themselves, the presidents are sometimes harassed by the embassies or consulates to say, hey, we're going to pull all students from the university if you don't comply with some kind of requirement to censor somebody speaking on campus. So it's a big problem across our country.
Wow. So I guess I've never heard of this. I think there's a lot of people right now that have never heard of this, that we're essentially, you kind of mentioned the word embassy. Is that really what these Confucius Institutes are? They're kind of de facto embassies, but they're on our college campuses.
Well, they're under the control of the Chinese Communist Party. They're part of the United Front Work Group, work department, which is essentially the propaganda arm of the Chinese Communist Party. Most of what they do, in the United States, we have a very large defense budget. Most of the way that the Chinese Communist Party does what it does is by organizing propaganda and information campaigns within democracies to provide support for what the Chinese Communist Party does. That allows them to, focus less on military means and focus more on...
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the Zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat-shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages, because right now my feelings are so hurt And I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Just heard a good joke. Did you guys hear the one about the guy and the girl who were on the date? The guy was a little nervous, really liked the girl. She's pretty. He was definitely dating up. And the girl, while they were on the date, looked at him and said that, she said, I'm a communist. The guy got real nervous and started to think up what he could say next that would impress her. And so he just, he was like, I've killed 100 million people. It worked out well for him. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. This from Sunday's paper. Internet sales bump local tax revenues. This is from the Jonesboro Sun staff writer Keith Inman, writing that collection of local sales. Now, the reason this is interesting is because of we want to know. I'd like to know the state numbers, like how much has the state gotten that's more in there. And from what I have been told, the state is saying there's no way we could know. So I would encourage all of you to go to your local governments, your local city councils, your local quorum courts, and ask them to look at their figures so that we can try to get a gauge on how much more revenue is actually coming from the people to the government in the form of these sales tax collections because of the internet sales tax. I think it's going to be an absolute windfall for local governments. So Keith Inman says collections of local sales from out-of-state businesses appears to have provided a bump in revenue for Jonesboro and Craighead County, but whether internet will be a major windfall for cities and counties moving forward is still uncertain, according to Mayor Harrell Parent. It will be a major windfall. Folks, can you imagine what's going to happen in November, Black Friday, Cyber Monday? Can you imagine what's going to happen now that you're getting all of this money from out-of-state sellers? It went into effect July 1st. Listen to this. Revenue from the county-wide 1% sales tax, again, we're talking about Craighead County here, was up this month, so this would be September, 3.86%. It's almost 4%. While Jonesboro's separate 1% tax was up 4.83%. 4.83% increase from I guess this month last year. So Craighead County and 10 other municipalities will share $1.7 million, an increase of $65,000 from the same time a year ago. Looking deeper into the numbers, collections, and category. Hey, let's just basically leave it here. 4.83%. Wow, that's a big increase. Think about that. So can we extrapolate that out? Let's say that's a 4.83% in the growth of the city budget. And I think it's going to be higher than that. Again, wait until you get the average. Wait until we go through the entire holiday season, right? And we go through essentially, the winter, spring, and half of the summer, to end the fiscal year. I'm telling you, it's going to be a lot of money, and it's money that cities and municipalities should be saving or maybe plugging budget holes instead of asking the people for more and more tax increases.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
Converting the population via these types of mechanisms to essentially provide support for what they do.
We're talking with Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding, Senior Fellow at the Hudson Institute. His book is out tomorrow about this topic, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. General Spalding, last week you were on the program, and I referenced that interview several times throughout the rest of the week for us, because when I asked you that question about Hong Kong, and you essentially exposed one of the things you talk about in the book, which I think is one of the most shocking, is that the Chinese government has essentially set up an organ, I guess an organ buying program where you can fly to China, you said, and schedule your heart surgery, because they take these dissidents and they put them in machines where they can keep them alive and harvest their organs and sell them to, global elite. I thought about that, all week, and I just thought how horrific. I mean, it's like something out of an Orwellian or science fiction, dystopian future,
Well, and it's happened before in our past, and I'll reference the Nazis, and not the organ harvesting clearly, but that kind of really terrible behavior has happened in our past. The Nazis, Stalin, and Mao did it in the same country, just very brutal. And so the one country that today, the only country, by the way, that banned this kind of travel to get transplants is Israel. And essentially, the heart surgeon there, who happened to be the head of the Transplant Association in Israel, who himself was a Holocaust survivor, his patient came to him and said, "Hey, I'm going next month to get a heart transplant." And he said, "Well, how do you know?" And he said, "Because I've scheduled it." And so he did some investigation, and you can go online and look. There's been an independent tribunal. They've released a summary report in the UK, led by Sir Jeffrey Nice. He's the guy that prosecuted Slobodan Milosevic for war crimes. They held a tribunal, and the summary report's out, and the final report, where they interviewed hundreds of witnesses, some doctors, others that were essentially taken in, their DNA was sequenced, and their organs were essentially, they got ultrasounds when they were in process to make sure that their organs were good. But they didn't have a match, so thankfully they were released. I mean, this is going on today as we speak, to the tunes of tens of thousands a year.
It's absolutely barbaric. I'm seeing here also part of this. Tell me about funneling technology to China, and what the Chinese will do to so-called American experts, giving them money.
Well, I mean, so one of the things that I talk about in the book, there was one gentleman working on the board of Oracle who was an expert in technology, and essentially the Chinese came to him and said, "We'll give you $1 billion, much like they did with Hunter Biden, and give you $1 billion to start a venture fund." And so he did. It's called Canyon Bridge, and they go around and they buy up technology on behalf of the Chinese government, who, by the way, gives it to their military, so it's both for economic and military means. I think the most egregious thing, the most terrible thing, is that what they do is they take money from Americans' retirement funds and get sent over to China by Wall Street. And once it gets to China, they send it back in order to buy struggling businesses who can't get investment in the United States but have some technology that the Chinese want. So, and even worse, next year, 2020, the federal...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Anybody see
is
this?
On now.
So go to Talk Business and Politics. It's on the front page. It's 4 hours ago. Representative Crawford. Now, I guess this is from the interview. Okay, I was wondering. You see, I'm assuming because the initial headline, okay, the initial headline from Congressman Rick Crawford's appearance on Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brogg had to do with Rick Crawford saying that, impeachment is ridiculous. Are my headphones working? Hang on, what's going on here? Let me see here. I got the left ear, something going on with this. And so now on the front page of Talk Business and Politics, we have this headline: Representative Crawford dubious of Chinese investments in U.S. and Arkansas. Uh-oh, now it's getting a little press here. Roby Brogg, U.S. Representative Rick Crawford said he has concerns about Chinese investments in America despite 6 Arkansas projects, including 3 in his congressional districts, being supported by Chinese investors. Investors? Really? Really? Investors? That's parroting. I'm sorry. That's just kind of like parroting. That's my microphone that's going out. Sorry. That's just kind of like parroting what Asa has said. Oh, Chinese investors, they look at the market just like everybody else. Yeah, they're free. They're like middle-class people tinkering around in their garage, free to invent. And no, they're communists. They're part of the Communist Party. They have been awarded. Where do you think that money comes from? Come on, guys. Good grief. So in an interview with Talk Business and Politics, Crawford outlined his reasons for concern. Quote, I have concerns about Chinese investing in the United States for a variety of reasons. Obviously, there's national security reasons. At the fore is the Chinese threat, not only in the business world, where they attempt to steal everything they can, intellectual property, forced technology transfers. We have 5 researchers indicted in the state of Arkansas just over a year ago for stealing rice research. This doesn't just happen in Arkansas. It happens all over the country. Interesting. Okay. All right. Now, we played for you the entire quote. It was devastating to the Asa Hutchinson Arkansas Economic Development Commission narrative, which is, first of all, they don't even address, it seems, that there could be a problem with China coming in. I mean, Crawford essentially said, I think at least twice in that interview, the Chinese are untrustworthy, or he maybe said that once, that you can't trust them, and that they are not here to help us. I mean, you talk about a divide, It's kind of the week of divisions. Asa Hutchinson comes out in support of impeachment. Or at least the impeachment inquiry, not the impeachment itself, but that we need to get to all the facts, blah, 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 blah. That the president made an unwise phone call is what Asa said. Okay? The Republican Party of Arkansas doesn't even agree with that. So you have a disagreement between the RPA and Asa over impeachment because they said the entire impeachment inquiry is invalid. And now you have this differing of two different economic development philosophies. Crawford makes a point to say he's not against economic development. He seems to indicate, though, why would you want to do it with China? Why would you want to bring communists into America? Roby Brock writes, again, talkbusiness.net, Arkansas has seen in-state announcements of 6 projects with Chinese investors. No, with the Chinese Communist government, including $1.5 billion of Sun Paper project near Arkadelphia. Crawford's district includes 3 Chinese-related economic development projects. Miss Server Machinery, 130 new jobs in Jonesboro. So does that mean that we have those jobs, that they're already here? Dragon Woodland, 75 new jobs in Helena, West Helena, and Shandong Rui Technology, 800 new jobs in Forest City. No, they're not here yet. Quote, if they're able to make these kinds of investments in states like Arkansas and other parts of the United States, why are they given preferential treatment as a developing economy in the World Trade Organization, which is having a negative impact on our economy? Now, I want to make clear, these are all things that Rick has said on this program multiple times over the last year. Quote, I can tell you, if you're investing billions of dollars outside of your own country, you have arrived. You don't need special treatment. They should be on the same footing as the United States, as the EU and other countries that are not developing but are in fact developed economies, and so they shouldn't be given special treatment. Crawford questioned the Arkansas investments and said he's worried about theft of technology. Quote, I think there's a strategic concern. There's obviously the academic institutions, as the Confucius Institute has become a major source of embedding researchers into academic institutions, students into academic institutions, whereby those individuals can steal technology and apply that in their own production back home in China. They're not honest brokers. They're not here to help us. I have concerns about it. Now, General Spaulding, Brigadier General Spaulding, who was on the program yesterday from the Hudson Institute, we specifically talked about these Confucius Institutes that are almost a requirement. If you want the Chinese international students to come to your university, the Chinese government wants you to have a Confucius Institute so that they can monitor the kids and make sure they don't get too westernized. So when you send them back to China, they're not all like, hey, freedom of speech was good. So we want to make sure we extinguish those little sparks of liberty or freedom. We don't need those coming back. Look what's going on in Hong Kong. They just shot a protester in the chest, by the way. We want to do business with them, though. Crawford, quote, I'm not trying to be a naysayer. I'm not trying to throw cold water on economic development. In fact, I'm all in for economic development. I think we ought to be looking at ways that we can grow our own businesses, essentially, and capitalize on our own ability here to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. You know, we mentioned the issue in Forest City. I think it's important that we do invest in our ability to create value in the supply chain, particularly with regard to cotton, because I have questions about whether or not we're going to sustain cotton production in the United States if we don't have a vertical integration model that allows for us to participate in the global marketplace with regard to textiles. We lost our textile industry some years back as a result of the World Trade Organization. It was a ruling of the WTO. So as the American cotton industry, it is struggling with how we're going to sustain production here. The answer is not to bring in Chinese investment and give over everything we have in the hopes that the Chinese are going to be fair and deal in good faith with us, because the answer to that is no, they're not. They're not here to help us. Wow. Talk about a complete departure and rebuke of the state of Arkansas's leadership at the state level. What are you guys doing? Are you going to listen? Are you going to listen to Congressman Crawford? Governor Hutchinson, is he still in Dubai or EAU or India? Where he went off to India this weekend. I'm sure he's back. I mean, maybe there needs to be a little private conversation had been like, hey, I'm on, there's a lot I know I can't say. I'm on the permanent select committee, House Committee on Intelligence. And my home state, I'm looking back. Now, I'm paraphrasing here. I don't know if this is, Rick Crawford's inner monologue, but he's got to be looking back at his home state here and being like, what's going on? This doesn't seem right. Let's see. When asked about the trade war with China, which has resulted in farmers nationwide being paid $28 billion over the past 2 years to make up for crops, Crawford said it's unlikely the U.S. can continue to make payments through its market facilitation program indefinitely, but he said he would continue to fight for offsets while pushing for more open trading partners. Anyway, what? Again, check it out. We played the audio for you yesterday, but now it's on the front page of talkbusiness.net. Dubious Chinese investments. Yeah, you can't trust the Chinese in this regard, right? You can't. First of all, how many times have we almost been close to a trade deal with China, but then they back out at the last minute? How many times has that happened? A lot. Why China? As many Arkansas politicians that have gone to jail for taking bribes or kickbacks, I'm going to assume that there are people in Arkansas who've taken money from the Chinese. Joe, what do you think about that? As many people who have gone to jail in Arkansas for state corruption issues, whether it's GIF or Jeremy Hutchinson pleading guilty because of the Medicaid money and all this stuff, and yet our chief economic development philosophy is we need the Chinese communist money? Did anybody see Peter Schweitzer on Mark Levin? This is relevant to Arkansas, I believe. This was Peter Schweitzer on Mark Levin on, is it Sunday or Saturday he does his show? It sounds like Joe Biden fixed up his son to help steal military secrets from China. Now, this is what's crazy and so weird to me, is that this whole Ukraine situation with these companies appears to be tied into China, right? Now, why is this relevant to Arkansas? Because all of these Chinese companies that Asa Hutchinson is trying to bring to Arkansas are from the Shandong province. So is a company called Carter Heavy Industries. Carter Heavy Industries is in the name of the email account that was set up to receive Hillary Clinton's emails on her private server. They were forwarded to carterheavyindustries@gmail.com. Why does that same name match a Chinese communist company in the Shandong province? This is why this is relevant. This, Peter Schweitzer's book, Secret Empires, details how politicians are getting rich because the Chinese are buying off their kids. And there's nothing technically illegal about that. Go ahead. Here is Peter Schweitzer on Mark Levin. Listen to this clip.
And they also need Hunter Biden's help, though, because the investments they make in this company, Bohai Harvest, RST. Now, remember, Hunter Biden's on the board of directors of this financial firm, and his business partner, Devin Archer, is on the investment committee. They start buying assets in the United States that are dual-use technologies. Dual-use.
Civilian and military.
Correct, exactly. So it has military implications. They buy this precision tool company, creates anti-vibration technologies called Henniges in Michigan. That transaction is required approval by CFIUS.
What's CFIUS?
CFIUS is the federal government's Committee on Foreign Investments in the United States.
Different cabinet officials or their surrogates have to actually approve these deals.
Exactly, because they're militarily sensitive. And look, I think it's pretty clear if you have the son of the vice president involved with the investment firm that's making this investment, even though it's the Chinese government doing it, that's pretty darn good cover. There's another investment they make in China General Nuclear, CGN, which is a company based in Hong Kong.
So strange.
They become shareholders in this. Again, the son of the vice president's on the board of directors of this company. They buy part of CGN. Within a year, our FBI is charging CGN with stealing nuclear secrets in the United States. So these are the kinds of transactions that are occurring. The problem from the standpoint of Hunter Biden is we have no idea how much he was being paid, and this is only the first deal that he does in China. There's another one called Rosemont Realty, which is a real estate firm. Hunter Biden is a co-founder of this real estate firm. A Chinese company called Gemini Investments, which is linked to Costco, which is a famous Chinese company tied to the Chinese military. Gemini comes in and buys 75% of Rosemont Realty in 2015. So Hunter Biden is doing deals in Ukraine. He's also doing deals in China.
But he's awash in Chinese money.
That's the thing.
And he is.
Stop.
Right.
Awash in Chinese money. So I'm telling you, what's weird about this is how it's not just one country, that you're doing business with a monolith. It's clearly there are connections and seeds all over the place. And if you listen to what Schweitzer's saying there, you really start to think of military secrets, this idea of these public-private ventures. And there are a few, you have to know where to look, but there are a few really interesting threads on this. And it's not popular to say this, but I will continue to do it because we've got to speak truth to power, folks. In every situation where China goes into these other countries, they grease the politicians first. Why would we think they would treat Arkansas any different? It's not one Chinese company. It's not two. It's 6. And they're all loyal. They're Communist Party entities disguising themselves as countries. Okay? Something is weird here. And it's all about the sons. Have you noticed this? It's the sons. You've got Hunter Biden, son of Joe Biden. You've got Chris Hines, stepson of John Kerry. You've got Whitey Bulger's nephew. Okay? It's very interesting here. And Schweitzer's book, Secret Empires, is onto something. And we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to know why Arkansas is so willing, not Arkansas, but why our leadership in the economic development field is so willing to embrace the communist Chinese while they're burning churches, tearing down churches, kidnapping women in the middle of the night, giving them forced abortions, putting dissidents in machines that keep them alive so they can harvest their organs, and elite wealthy people across the world can schedule heart transplant surgery. We need to stop this madness and stop doing business with the communist Chinese in and of the idea of bringing them here, bringing their communist entities here. Again, it's one thing to trade, but it's a whole other thing. And I'm going to keep harping on this. I'm sorry. I don't understand how this isn't a huge story. You'd think the mainstream press would be licking their lips at trying to highlight a difference between a Republican governor and a Republican president. But you get very little curiosity on this front. We're going to take a break. Back in a minute. It's absolutely barbaric. I'm seeing here also part of this. Tell me about funneling technology to China and what the Chinese will do to so-called American experts, giving them money.
Well, so one of the things that I talk about in the book, there was one gentleman working on the board of Oracle who was an expert in technology, and essentially the Chinese came to him and said, "We'll give you $1 billion, much like they did with Hunter Biden. We'll give you $1 billion to start a venture fund." And so he did. It's called Canyon Bridge, and they go around and they buy up technology on behalf of the Chinese government, who, by the way, gives it to their military, so it's both for economic and military means. I think the most egregious thing, the most terrible thing, is that what they do is they take money from Americans' retirement funds that gets sent over to China by Wall Street, and once it gets to China, they send it back.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Couple of stories. We covered one of them last hour. By the way, we're going to be talking with Family Council's David Cox coming up here in just a moment. Always great to talk to them. China cautions U.S. on investment curbs. There's talk that maybe the White House denies, but they might remove Chinese companies from the U.S. stock exchange because we're just done with this. Again, way different, at least ideas being discussed from the state to the federal level. We also have Linda Satter. Judge rejects bid in Senator Jason Rapert's case to dismiss the lawsuit. They're saying it's going to go forward. Atheists are upset that they've been blocked by Senator Jason Rapert on Twitter. It's being described as a First Amendment showdown, but U.S. District Judge Christine Baker refused to dismiss the January 8th lawsuit alleging that the senator violated the First Amendment rights of atheists who disagreed with him. So anyway, here's the thing about this. I get it, blocking people on Twitter. But I think we've already had some upper court rulings saying that the president can't do it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is being summoned to court asking why she's blocked some conservatives on Twitter. So we'll see what happens with this. But anyway, what else do we have? Oh, yeah, this is interesting. You know, everybody wants to talk about vaping. We've got politicians in Arkansas wanting to tax vaping. We talked about this last hour. But this is an interesting headline from the Daily Wire. Let's see, Amanda Prestigiacomo writing, transgender puberty blockers linked to thousands of deaths according to the FDA. Boy, you don't see a rush of, oh my word, puberty blockers. We've got to do something, like stop or prosecute parents that, I feel like a boy today, Mom, but I'm really a biological girl. Oh, you're 6 or 7 and we need to get, that's it. You're now, you now need to take these hormone blockers. 6,300. They're talking about 12 deaths and 500 lung illnesses. And we've got 6,300 adults have died from reactions to a drug that's used as a puberty blocker in gender-confused children. Between 2012 and June 30th of this year, the FDA documented over 40,000 adverse reactions suffered by patients who took this drug called Lupron, which is used as a hormone blocker. More than 25,500 reactions logged from 2014 to 2019 were considered serious, including 6,300 deaths. This, of course, according to the Christian Post, reporting that Lupron is being prescribed off-label for use in children who've been diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Despite the lack of formal FDA approval for that purpose, the drug is clinically approved for treatment of precocious puberty, a condition where children start their pubertal process at an abnormally early age, and the blocker is administered for a short time until the proper age. But just keep them on that. It's not going to be a problem. What is going on? Pretty soon, you know how they're outlawing these ideas of conversion therapy, gay conversion therapy, and that sort of thing, like, or the idea that you would go and get therapy because maybe you don't want to be gay, or maybe your parents are, whatever. And there's a lot of discussion on the negativity, the negatives of that and that sort of thing, or whatever. But I will say this, dude, this idea that you're going to abuse children, it is child abuse to give your kids who don't even have a fully developed brain, and you're not going to until you're at least 18, and some people say 22. You're going to make that decision for them to where their hormones are now messed up for life. It's literally like experimenting on kids. Like if this were done outside of any sort of parental environment, and I say parents in quotation marks, just my goodness, what parent would do this to their children? Unless you were you wanted your society to approve heartily of the way you think and your lifestyle, that you're willing to do this to kids. Unbelievable. You know, have you heard the stories of parents who was it? Was it the you got the gender neutral Barbies now, or the gender you can transition Barbies now from male to female, and you got some of these parents that are like, oh, I hope my son is gay. You know, I hope he's gay. You know, anyway, it's just so strange, so strange. Telephone number 870-275-9799. Folks, when we come back, we'll be talking with Family Counsel's David Cox. In Canada, suicide is cheaper than health care for some. What is that about? David will be here to respond to that. You can check this article out, by the way. It's up right now at familycounsel.org. That's familycounsel.org. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just a moment.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
In order to buy struggling businesses who can't get investment in the United States but have some technology that the Chinese want. So, and even worse, next year, 2020, the Federal Thrift Savings Board, the board that was my 401k plan when I was in the military, is going to start sending money over to China. What they use, the other things that they use that money for is to buy weapons. So they'll buy aircraft carriers, ships, planes, tanks. These are weapons that someday, our military perhaps may be fighting. So if you can imagine, our retirement funds are going to pay for the weapons of the Chinese military. I mean, you just really can't make this stuff up.
Again, we're talking with Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding. He's a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. You want to get his new book tomorrow? You can get it now, pre-order, but it comes out tomorrow, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America's Elite Slept. General Spalding, it's always great to have you. I got one more question. Your concern about China and what they're doing, it's more than just China may supplant the United States. It really comes down to freedom, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And I talk about the story about Roy Jones in there where, he was working for Marriott Corporation, mid-level employee, making, I think, $15 an hour, likes to tweet about Tibet. The Chinese Communist Party calls up the Marriott Corporation and tells them to fire him and apologize, and they do. And this kind of behavior is going on all the time, where U.S. corporations are essentially coerced by the Chinese Communist Party to censure or punish or fire, essentially lay off American citizens doing what the Constitution gives them the right to do. So this close personal relationship with the Chinese Communist Party is eroding our freedoms on a day-to-day basis.
General Spalding, we appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. Best of luck in the sales of that book.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Hey, welcome back to the program. Okay, this caught my eye. I'm over at familycouncil.org, and I'm reading an article that says that up in Canada, okay, there was a man who had ALS, okay, and he was denied 24-hour home health care services due to the money that it cost. Okay, so he's denied health care. So then the man, because he was denied 24-hour service, opted to then commit suicide under Canada's assisted suicide laws. Unbelievable, if you think about it. Here to talk more about that with us is Family Council's David Cox. David, great to have you on the program for the first time. How are you?
I'm doing good, Paul. How are you? Thanks for having me on here.
I'm doing fantastic. What can you tell us about this story?
Sure. Well, one issue that we work on very closely at Family Council is physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia. And, this is an issue that comes up. It came up in Arkansas a few months ago. It's come up across the U.S., but it especially rears its head in Canada. Right now, physician-assisted suicide kills about as many Canadians as car accidents do, if you look at the stats. And so with this particular case, there was a gentleman named Sean Taggart. He was about 40 years old. He had Lou Gehrig's disease. Diagnosed about 6 years ago, and really inspired a lot of people because he chose to persevere and fight against this illness, even though it's a lethal illness, for the sake of his son, really. And so he's worked very hard for the last 6 years, or had worked very hard for 6 years to hang on and hold on to as much life as he could. And back a few months ago, suffered a cardiac arrest and needed to be placed on a ventilator. And, of course, if you're on a ventilator, you need 24-hour health care, really, because of the nature of that kind of health care. And the Canadian government would only give him about 20 hours of health care. They didn't want to spend an extra $250 a day for a full 24 hours of in-home health care for this gentleman. And so in the end, he exhausted all of his options trying to get the Canadian government to pay for his health care under their socialized medicine system. And when they didn't do that, he decided to use lethal injection, which is something that they offer in Canada, if you will, under physician-assisted suicide. And that's sent a lot of shock waves through Canada and here in the U.S., where people are just floored that somebody would end up having to commit suicide because they can't afford health care.
Yeah, and what I'm thinking here is, the government healthcare system up there, at least from a monetary standpoint, they're happy with the results, right? I mean, that's what's so dangerous and evil about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it would be easy to say, well, this is just an example of why we don't need socialized medicine. Obamacare, Medicaid expansions that we're seeing offered by some of the more progressive candidates and politicians. We would say, well, yeah, of course, that's what happens when you have socialized health care, is the government doesn't want to pay for your treatment because it can be so expensive. But, we're seeing this right here in the U.S. with states that have legalized physician-assisted suicide. Right now, if you look at the stats, about 3 to 5% of the people in Oregon who opt for physician-assisted suicide do so for financial reasons. We've seen stories out of California and Washington where insurance companies or Medicaid programs have said, we won't pay for chemotherapy, we won't pay for certain life-saving surgeries, but we will pay for assisted suicide drugs under the state's assisted suicide program. And so this is a problem whether you're in a socialized country, a socialist country, or if you're in a capitalist country. It's really just something that's the nature of physician-assisted suicide. It's a problem that goes with it.
So, I mean, fundamentally, it's essentially reflecting the fact that we do not value life the way we used to in society. Would you agree with that?
I would. And what you end up with are these situations where accountants and actuaries sit down and they try to calculate the dollar value of somebody's life. And they say, well, here's a 40-year-old man with ALS. He's not going to get any better. His life isn't worth as much as somebody who's younger or doesn't have this terminal disease. And so they try to put a dollar value on it. And that's wrong. I would say that's definitely wrong. But that's what you open yourself up to if you legalize physician-assisted suicide in your state.
You think assisted suicide's murder?
I do. Yeah, I think, if you want to get philosophical about it, it's an unjustified homicide. It's whether you take your own life or somebody else's life, there's just no justifying it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, and I know Family Council, I mean, y'all's mission is to protect life from, conception to natural death. That's the key word there is, natural death. Yes,
absolutely. We don't have any right to go taking our own lives or telling other people that their lives aren't worth living. And, again, with physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia, that's what you end up doing, unfortunately.
Wow. We also have this other article back on the 27th. Again, it's at familycouncil.org. This headline, Pro-Suicide Group Helps Dementia Patients Request Starvation. Again, we're talking with David Cox from the Family Council. What is this story about? Pro-Suicide Group Helps Dementia Patients Request Starvation.
Yeah. Well, that one gets a little bit complicated, so I'll try to break it down. In most states, I think 41 states right now, assisted suicide is illegal, and Arkansas is one of those states. And so to get around those anti-suicide and anti-euthanasia laws, pro-suicide groups like Compassion and Choices, which is the group we're talking about here. Compassion and Choice has been around for a number of years. They used to be called the Hemlock Society. They advocate physician-assisted suicide and euthanasia. They're helping people craft what they call aggressive advanced directives. And these are advanced directives where a person will put in writing, hey, once my illness reaches a certain point, or once I reach this certain point with my health care, then I no longer want to be fed. Please don't give me food. Don't give me water. Just let me starve or die from dehydration. And what they're marketing this service, quote unquote, to is dementia patients right now, where people who have been diagnosed with dementia can say in writing, once I can't dress myself, once I can't feed myself, once I have trouble communicating or remembering people, then I want you to stop feeding me and stop giving me water. And I actually sat down on the Compassion and Choices website. I completed this document in just a few minutes. It does not take long to do. It was actually really scary how quickly and easily I was able to craft a document that I could use to put in writing that says, I don't want to be given food or water if I come down with dementia. But, Paul, where this is really a problem is the area for abuse, where family members who don't want to take care of a dementia patient could, in the privacy of their own home, craft one of these documents saying, please don't give my loved one food or water, and they could have their loved one who has dementia sign off on this document, and the dementia patient can't look out for their own interests oftentimes, and so there's just all kinds of problems because there's no oversight on these advanced directives, quote unquote. There are all kinds of areas where they could be abused and used to starve people to death and really euthanize people by starvation is what we're talking about.
The idea that starvation is the answer because you have a patient that has problems buttoning or unbuttoning their shirt, is that an actual reason that's listed on this document?
That is, yeah, trouble getting dressed, and actually the document goes farther than that. You could add your own reason to it if you wanted to. So it could be, you could make up anything that you wanted, trouble reading, trouble, watching TV, trouble, tying my shoes. There's really no limit to what you could put on this document when it comes to requesting the reasons that you could list for requesting starvation or dehydration.
How do doctors feel about this?
Well, the overwhelming majority of doctors, if you talk to them, would say it's wrong to deny somebody food or water just because they can't get dressed. I mean, that's, they can't dress themselves. That's obvious. I mean, most doctors are reluctant to ever say, you should deny somebody food or water. And so doctors obviously would say it's unethical to, starve someone to death just because they have trouble getting dressed or remembering people's names. And so to help people circumvent that, Compassion and Choices created a tool, a list of questions that patients and caregivers can use to screen doctors, to help them find doctors who will go along with these ridiculous advanced directives where we're putting in writing that people ought to be starved to death. And so it's a way, basically, Compassion and Choices helps people find, I would say, pro-suicide or pro-euthanasia doctors who will go along with their plans for starvation.
Yeah, and the name of the group is Compassionate Choices. That's pretty insidious too. Now, what does this mean here in Arkansas? I mean, because I know, I believe State Representative Dan Douglas, he actually filed an assisted suicide bill. I mean, it went down in flames in Arkansas earlier this year. But I mean, is this right now? Is there anything we could do in Arkansas to try to stop this kind of quote health care end quote?
Mm-hmm. Not legislatively at the moment, obviously, because the legislature's not in session. We are talking to some doctors and some lawmakers and making plans for the long term. This is really a long-term battle. It's not something that you're going to win in a one fell swoop. And so, we're aware of some cases anecdotally where some patients may have been denied food or water. We're aware of some cases anecdotally where doctors may have given patients a lethal dose of opiates or something like that. And, not a whole lot of evidence that we could go on necessarily to take somebody to court. So I think the issue long term is going to be how do we bring more oversight to end-of-life health care? And then also talking to Arkansans and saying, basically we need to have high expectations of end-of-life health care in Arkansas. And I think that's going to mean just Arkansans expecting a lot of their doctors, their hospices, palliative care experts, asking a lot of questions and really thinking about these issues. A lot of people don't give much thought to end-of-life issues like, terminal health care, assisted suicide, euthanasia, just because it's not on the radar. And, I think having conversations about it and educating people is going to be key.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if Arkansas, by the way, I just want to reiterate here, if we have laws against assisted suicide and yet somebody fills out one of these little forms, what's the difference between, like, Jack Kevorkian, giving you, a shot, that's going to kill you, or, you kind of circumventing the law barring that by filling out some form that says, no, starve me, or somebody else could fill out the form, starve this person if they can't do X, Y, or Z, if they can't tie their shoe. I mean, that's kind of going against the spirit of the law, is it not?
It is, and that's why I say it lives in a legally gray area. You talk to some attorneys that they could say, well, I think you can argue that this is physician-assisted suicide and it's illegal. Others will say, well, there may be some technicalities with the law that would permit this. But, at the end of the day, it's really a matter of who's going to report it and oversee it. If the doctor's in on starving the patient to death, if the family's in on it, if the patient can't stand up for themselves, then, the issue really becomes then how would you even police it and prosecute it, even if it were clearly illegal. And so I think that's why we're talking to doctors about ways that we can bring more oversight and transparency to some of these issues without burdening really good doctors who are trying to help and provide legitimate treatment to cancer patients and people who have terminal illnesses.
Wow.
One of the just natures of this beast is if you're not careful, you end up, it's sort of like, we could liken it to gun control. You burden the law-abiding doctors, and the ones who are skirting the laws just go on skirting the laws, and they ignore what you put in writing. So it can be a complicated issue.
Yeah, and let me thank you guys, and thank you, David, for approaching it with that attitude, that you could have unintended consequences, because, you don't see that a lot in government or people trying to write laws. They just want to try to, fix the problem, and they just ignore the fact that government tends to, get bad results elsewhere.
Yeah, if you're going to do something, you want to make sure you do something that works, for sure.
Yeah. David Cox from Family Council, the website, folks, familycouncil.org. They're Arkansas-focused, and they are standing up for, families and traditional values. And, David, I really appreciate you coming on the program. It was a pleasure.
Hey, thank you.
All righty. Folks, find out more. It's familycouncil.org. We're going to take a break, going to reset here. We're going to be back with your meme of the day. Don't go anywhere.
Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
In order to buy struggling businesses who can't get investment in the United States but have some technology that the Chinese want. So, and even worse, next year, 2020, the Federal Thrift Savings Board, the board that was my 401k plan when I was in the military, is going to start sending money over to China. What they use, the other things that they use that money for is to buy weapons. So they'll buy aircraft carriers, ships, planes, tanks. These are weapons that someday, our military perhaps may be fighting. So if you can imagine, our retirement funds are going to pay for the weapons of the Chinese military. You just really can't make this stuff up.
Again, we're talking with Brigadier General Robert S. Spalding. He's a senior fellow at the Hudson Institute. You want to get his new book tomorrow. You can get it now, pre-order, but it comes out tomorrow, Stealth War, How China Took Over While America...
Let's face it, times are tough for the Arkansas General Assembly. They're all waiting for the spotlight exposing public corruption to end, so they won't be under so much scrutiny. And during this time, what if you're a legislator and you need money? What if you're slapped with a huge expense? What if your check for consultant services is late this month? Or maybe you just need extra cash now until payday. When that happens, you can't wait. Hi, I'm Bobby Blackmail for the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank, your trusted source to over 135 lenders to get you short-term cash fast. Use the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank today, and you can have up to $12,500 cash in your checking account tomorrow. Dried-up bribes no longer coming from Medicaid entities? Handled. Extra cash until your hopeful acquittal? Done. And you'll be surprised at how easy it is to get extra cash. Just be an elected official and be comfortable with the status quo, and we'll connect you with a fellow legislator who is ready. It's quick and easy. And don't worry if you can't make the payments, because the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank is designed to help you get through these tough economic times. There are other ways you can pay off your debt, like by voting the way the establishment wants, or by rewarding some with committee chairmanships. So forget about overdraft fees and the spirit of covetousness that sometimes overwhelms the best of lawmakers. Just remember, the Arkansas Intra-Legislator Bank for short-term cash between colleagues when you need it fast.
Some transactions have long-term consequences.
Paul Harrell, parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back. There's a real quick, this one struck out at me. I'm sorry, I've got to mention this. This is just ridiculous. There is United States, so the Presbyterian Church USA, or PCUSA, there's a congregation in New York. So that's a specific denomination of Presbyterian, PCUSA. Congregation hosts pagan sculpture at church. They have put a pagan sculpture in their church on display, and it is obviously controversial. Church in Binghamton, I don't know how you would say that, associated with the pro-LGBT group, hosted by 15-foot-tall totem sculpture known as Sviatovid. The sculpture was created by a guy named, by Bart Cress's studio designer, Akira Wakui. Was put on display at the church earlier this month as part of the Luma Festival. Does that have anything to do with the moon? Luna? Sviatoid will materialize in the sanctuary of Binghamton United Presbyterian Church with additional content. Is it like a light show kind of thing? Anyway, you should look at this. It looks like a demon face. I mean, it's totally repugnant. This would be, anyway. I just don't understand this. I don't understand how people, listen, they're claiming that the church is doing this in the spirit of multiculturalism. It's just absolutely. The Christian Post, though, somebody wrote, to put a false god in the same spot as God's communion table, regardless of the fact that it was not during a worship service, raises questions of prudential judgment and possibly sacrilegious. Yeah, a little bit. You think so? My goodness. It's like, I don't even know anymore, guys. Like, when you hear stuff like this, I don't even know. I think there's certainly a danger. This has happened a lot of times in just church culture. There's always a danger to try to want the approval of the culture that the church is in. And what they don't understand is, it doesn't matter what culture you're in, biblical Christianity will always offend some aspect of the predominantly secular, or in this case, pagan culture. And it's just, that's just what happens. I mean, you just look at the very nature. And I've said this before, and I believe, I think even Tim Keller made this argument at one point, that if you were to take the virtues of love your neighbor as yourself as preached in the Bible, and you were to take that and preach that in, let's say, Islamic culture, Sharia culture. They think that's ridiculous. That's offensive to them. That aspect of Christianity offends them. Love your neighbors yourself. No, their culture's built more on, if you're weak, then, and you're vulnerable, then you're going to get snuffed out next, right? But if you take the biblical principle of, chastity or, sex after marriage, not before marriage, if you put that out into the public here in America, well, that's regressive, that's not free, and that offends American culture now because we're obsessed with sex. But you take that same argument over in the Islamic world, and it doesn't go far enough because they want, a female genital mutilation to take place. They want to cover, their women from head to toe. You know what I mean? It's actually, it's just, it's fascinating. But then you got these pagan, it's pagan sculpture in a church, and now there's nothing wrong with it. It's ridiculous. And it really makes me wonder what kind of times, what kind of times are we actually living in here, Telephone number 870-275-9799. For those that we're going to get to your meme of the day here in just a moment, I want to remind everybody what our graphic is this week, which is essentially a state of Arkansas, of the Arkansas flag, but we've got the Chinese stars in place of the Arkansas stars. And if we're going to talk impeachment, why don't we try to impeach China is kind of our message today. That seems to be a little bit more reasonable than buying into this liberal media narrative. It seems like our governor has, because he thinks the impeachment inquiry should proceed so that we can get to the bottom of this. But if you know anything about what's out there, what you can consume, what the truth is, this is baseless and you're being set up, The CIA is trying to finish what the FBI couldn't in the, the elite versions of that anyway. That's what it looks like to me. And we now know why. Right? We now know why. And this, of course, is pretty simple, but the Daily Caller article report AG Barr is ramping up his probe of CIA, FBI activities in 2016. Looking into getting other countries to cooperate with him. That's why this has happened. And then, of course, you look at Arkansas and we say, why are we bending over backwards to do business with China? Why isn't there a journalist in Arkansas that's starting to ask and promote this division between Asa Hutchinson and Donald Trump on their China policy? You'd think there'd be somebody that would start to point this out, because normally the media loves it when two Republicans, one the more conservative one, they use the more liberal one to demonize the more conservative one. They do this all the time. It's not happening here. And again, the Facebook feed here at Conduit News, facebook.com/Conduit News, is filled with people who are thanking Congressman Rick Crawford for speaking out against what China is attempting to do here in Arkansas. Just so you know. Filled with people. And they have been for the last 2 days. Of people saying thank you to Congressman Crawford for speaking out on that Talk Business and Politics show, Roby Brock show. And saying, listen, Jackie says, thank you to Congressman Crawford for speaking out against what Asa is doing with the Chinese. It's not like that doesn't happen without, backlash or potential backlash and risk. So, and then, of course, we have the RPA is disagreeing with Asa as well. Remember that? The RPA is disagreeing with Asa Hutchinson over the impeachment inquiry. The Republican Party of Arkansas says that it's invalid. Asa says it needs to go forward so we can get to the bottom of it. He called the call unwise between Trump and the Ukrainian President Zelensky. Here's your meme of the day. Courtesy of the silent majority. This is for you gun control freaks. Picture of Adam and Eve in the garden. It just says, banning things didn't work for God, but the government can probably make it work. Adam and Eve taking from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Surely you won't die. Boy, that was certainly a lie, wasn't it? Boy, calling it a lie is almost an understatement. Surely you won't die. Arkansas, have a great Tuesday. Be safe. We'll see you back here tomorrow, 6:05. Go to conduitnews.com for more.